If you ask like 50 Rottweiler owners what the absolute hardest part of living with their dog is, you would probably expect a very specific type of answer.
Oh, for sure. You'd think it's all about the muscle.
Right. You'd assume they'd talk about the sheer physical toll, of holding back 100+ pounds of just raw muscle on a leash, or maybe like the intimidation factor of walking an animal that looks like it could pull a freight train.
Yeah, that's usually the assumption.
But if you actually dig into the literature and talk to longtime breeders, the word that comes up over and over again has literally nothing to do with muscle.
No, it really doesn't.
The word they all eventually land on is reliability.
Which is fascinating because it fundamentally reframes how we think about a working breed.
Hmm.
I mean, we see a dog built for power, and we project our own human assumptions onto it.
Like we assume the daily reality is just this constant, exhausting test of physical strength.
Exactly. But reliability is about mental endurance.
Yeah.
It's the understanding that a predictable, stable temperament doesn't just happen by accident, even in really well-bred dogs.
Right.
It has to be constructed day by day through routine, the environment, and a deeply intentional approach from, well, the person holding the other end of that leash.
And for you listening today, that is exactly what we are exploring in this deep dive. We are looking at a stack of notes and behavioral guidelines from the Rottweiler Health Academy.
It's a really comprehensive set of sources.
It is, and our goal here isn't to just list out like basic dog training tips. We want to understand the actual mechanics of matching a modern human lifestyle with the deeply ingrained instincts of a historical working dog.
And to understand those mechanics, we really have to look at what they were actually engineered to do in the first place.
Right, their history.
Yeah. So these dogs descend from Roman drover dogs. I mean, they were bred to march across the Alps, driving cattle and protecting the herds.
Wow, marching across the Alps, that is serious endurance.
Absolutely. And then later, in the German town of Rottweil, they became butcher's dogs.
Okay, what does a butcher's dog actually do?
Well, they pulled carts of meat to market and literally guarded the day's earnings. Like, the butchers would sometimes tie the money pouches right around the dog's necks.
Oh, wow, nobody's messing with that bank vault.
Exactly. So when we talk about their modern behavior, we are talking about an animal whose DNA is just screaming for a job,
Yeah.
for physical endurance, and for a very clear set of responsibilities.
Okay, let's unpack how that history collides with modern living. Because the very first preconception we have to shatter here is about physical space.
This is a big one.
It really is. The standard cultural assumption is that a giant athletic dog automatically requires a giant sprawling backyard.
Right, the classic American dream setup.
Yeah, and a lot of people think it's borderline cruel to keep a big dog in a smaller space, like an apartment. But the behavioral data completely upends that idea, doesn't it? The physical space is actually an illusion.
It is. The assumption is that physical space directly equates to physical exercise, which is, it's honestly one of the most pervasive misunderstandings in the dog world.
So a big yard doesn't equal a tired dog.
Not at all. An empty yard does not exercise a dog.
Yeah.
If you take a highly intelligent, historically driven working breed and leave it alone in a beautifully fenced half-acre yard.
They aren't running laps.
No, they do not run laps for fitness. They don't, like, design their own cardiovascular routines.
That would be convenient, though.
It would be great, but without direction, they just sit by the back door waiting to be let back in. Or they pace the fence line, or they develop these anxiety-driven habits.
Like barking at the wind.
Exactly, barking at every passing car out of sheer understimulation and boredom.
It makes me think of having like a fully equipped home gym in your garage.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because the physical space and the equipment are there, that doesn't mean you're actually getting a workout if you just walk out there and sit on a yoga mat for an hour.
Yeah, just sitting there doesn't build any muscle.
The potential is there, but without an active program, literally nothing is happening.
That is exactly it. A yard is a location, it's not an activity. And this leads to a really compelling reality outlined in the Academy notes.
Which is?
Well, a mentally engaged Rottweiler living in a modest third-floor apartment is frequently in a much healthier psychological state than an understimulated Rottweiler living on a massive suburban lot.
Wait, really? A third-floor apartment can be better?
Yeah, because in the apartment scenario, the owner lacks the luxury of complacency.
Ah, because you can't just open a door and ignore them.
Right. You can't outsource the dog's morning routine to the backyard. You are forced to put on your shoes, clip on the leash, and actively navigate the outside world alongside the animal.
Which introduces this incredible advantage for the urban dog, something the literature calls incidental socialization.
Yes, incidental socialization is so important.
Because you would instinctively think a quiet house out in the country is a dog paradise, right?
Yeah.
But urban living provides this constant, low-level stream of sensory data.
And that data is arguably the most valuable behavioral currency you can build with a working breed. Well, when you live in a dense city or a busy apartment complex, just a basic 20-minute walk around the block is a complex psychological exercise for the dog.
Because there's just so much going on.
Exactly. They're smelling the lingering scent of a delivery driver, hearing the hiss of bus brakes, watching a skateboarder rattle past.
Navigating around pedestrians on a tight sidewalk.
Right. The dog's brain is constantly processing stimuli, evaluating threats versus non-threats, and learning that the chaos of the world is, entirely normal and safe.
While out in a rural setting, that incidental exposure just doesn't exist. It's quiet.
Very quiet.
The dog might see, like, one mail truck a day.
And that lack of exposure can quickly become a massive liability for a guarding breed. Rural living gives you wonderful off-leash freedom, but it creates a sensory vacuum.
A sensory vacuum. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because if you live in an isolated setting, you have to be highly intentional about manufacturing social encounters.
You have to actually try.
Right. You have to actively load the dog into a vehicle, drive into town, and walk them through busy hardware stores or outdoor markets.
Because if you don't...
If a dog whose DNA is wired to guard a butcher's cart only knows isolation, the sudden appearance of a stranger on their quiet country road isn't processed as normal.
It's processed as a threat.
Exactly. It's a high-level threat, which triggers suspicion and defensive behavior. So the physical environment matters far less than the owner's willingness to fill in whatever developmental gaps that environment creates.
Okay, but that level of intentional exposure obviously takes a significant amount of time and effort, which brings up kind of the elephant in the room here.
Time commitment.
Yeah. How does someone actually fit this into a standard modern schedule? Navigating a 9-to-5 workday with an animal that demands a job seems almost impossible.
It seems that way, but it comes back to that core concept of reliability we talked about earlier.
Which comes from a predictable rhythm.
Exactly. A successful day with an adult working breed requires a steady, dependable cadence.
So you can't just be a weekend warrior about it.
No, absolutely not. It is not about providing one exhausting 3-hour hike on a Sunday and then just coasting for the rest of the week.
What does a good daily rhythm actually look like then?
It requires a morning-focused activity session, some form of midday engagement, maybe a puzzle feeder or a trusted dog walker breaking up the hours, and a highly structured evening wind-down.
And the behavioral data from the Academy notes is ruthless about what happens when you skip that rhythm. Inconsistency is basically a catalyst for behavioral collapse.
It really is.
Like, if you are highly engaged all weekend but essentially ignore the dog from Monday to Wednesday, you don't get a dog that patiently hibernates until Saturday.
No, you definitely don't.
You get an animal vibrating with unspent mental energy.
And boredom in a powerful working breed does not look like a lazy dog sighing on a rug.
What does it look like?
Boredom looks like an intelligent animal deciding to invent its own assignments. Yeah. Because they possess that biological drive to solve problems and manipulate their environment, a lack of structured work creates a void.
And they will fill that void.
Oh, they will fill it. They'll undertake the project of disassembling your couch cushions to see what's inside.
Or meticulously chewing through the baseboards.
Exactly. Or they'll decide their new full-time job is aggressively guarding the front window from falling leaves.
So they aren't being bad dogs, necessarily.
No, they're not acting out of malice at all. They are simply employing their work ethic toward the wrong objectives because you didn't give them a right one.
Okay, I have to push back a little on this idea of the time commitment, because I think a lot of people listening might feel they are doing enough just by being present.
Sure, that's a common feeling.
Say I work a grueling 10-hour day. I commute home. I'm just exhausted. I order dinner. I sit on the couch, and I let the dog curl up right next to me for 5 solid hours while I watch television.
Okay.
I am physically with the dog for half the evening. Does that not count? Does that not fulfill their social need?
Well, it fulfills a need for proximity, but it does absolutely nothing for their cognitive needs.
Really nothing.
Nothing. There is a vast psychological gulf between passive presence and engaged time.
Ah, engaged time.
Right. To a dog bred for complex tasks, your passive presence on a couch while staring at a screen is just background noise.
Wow.
You are in the room, sure, but you are not functioning as a leader or a partner. Working a full-time job is entirely possible with this breed, but the hours you are home must include genuine, focused engagement.
Meaning I have to actually put the phone down and interact?
Precisely. It means direct eye contact. It means 10 minutes of obedience drills where the dog actually has to think critically to earn their dinner.
Making them work for it.
Yeah, it means structured tug-of-war where they practice impulse control by dropping the toy on command.
So it's about quality, not just quantity.
Yes. A dog that receives 30 minutes of intense, focused, brain-burning engagement will settle down and handle the subsequent hours of solitude far better than a dog whose owner shares the same room for 6 hours but never actively demands the dog's attention.
Mental exhaustion settles a dog much faster than just existing in the same airspace.
Exactly. Mental exhaustion is the goal.
That distinction is incredibly helpful. Okay, so we've mapped out the time management for an individual owner, but let's look at the broader household ecosystem.
Right, because very few people live completely alone.
Exactly. Most people don't live in a solitary bubble. What happens when we introduce the variables of a full chaotic house? We're talking kids, other pets, or, a complete lack of previous dog owning experience.
Introducing unpredictability into a Rottweiler's environment is where the sheer physics of the breed re-enter the conversation.
Right, they're 100+ pounds of muscle.
Yeah, I mean, children are inherently erratic. They run, they scream, they drop food, they fall over.
It's just what kids do.
Exactly. But managing this requires a household framework built on absolute clarity.
Like setting hard rules.
Yes, and it goes far beyond training the dog not to jump. It requires teaching children rigid boundaries about respectful interaction.
Like never approaching the dog while it's eating?
Or sleeping, yes. Constant supervision is non-negotiable. And again, not because the dog is inherently malicious, but strictly due to the unforgiving physics of a huge animal.
Right, an accidental bump.
A joyous, clumsy bump from a dog of that density can send a toddler to the emergency room.
And when it comes to multi-pet homes, the guidelines read almost like a manual for delicate diplomatic negotiations.
You really do.
It says you have to feed animals in completely separate rooms, ensure each pet has an isolated safe zone where they cannot be bothered, and completely abandon the expectation that everyone will just be best friends on day one.
Instant harmony across species is a very dangerous expectation to place on a guarding breed with a high prey drive.
You can't just hope for the best.
No, you must manage the environment to prevent a conflict before the animals even have the opportunity to make a mistake.
Which brings up perhaps the most debated question in all of the source material. Can a Rottweiler be a first dog?
Ah, the first-time owner question.
Yeah. The consensus seems to be that they can, but only if the owner is obsessively invested in learning. The strong warning here is that this is absolutely not the breed you use to learn the fundamentals of dog training on.
No, the learning curve is too steep.
It made me think of the automotive world. Getting a Rottweiler as your very first dog is essentially like learning to drive in a high-performance sports car, like a Porsche 911.
The amplification of consequences in that scenario perfectly mirrors canine behavioral development.
Right. Because the sports car isn't inherently evil or malicious. It is a beautifully engineered, highly responsive machine.
Yes, it does exactly what you tell it to do.
But if you are a 16-year-old with a learner's permit and you accidentally tap the gas too hard in a used 4-cylinder sedan, you just bump the curb. It's a harmless mistake.
You learn and move on.
But if you make that exact same rookie error with the throttle of a high-performance sports car, the machine does exactly what it's built to do, and suddenly you are going through a brick wall.
Yep.
The consequences of your mistake are amplified exponentially by the sheer power of the equipment.
And that amplification is exactly why you cannot cut corners during the foundational or adolescent phases of this breed's life.
The stakes are just higher.
Much higher. If you are inconsistent when teaching leash manners to a 15-pound lapdog, you end up with an annoying walk.
Right.
If you're inconsistent teaching leash manners to a Rottweiler, you end up with a dislocated shoulder.
Oh, man, yeah.
If you allow a small dog to resource guard its toys, it's a nuisance. If you allow a dog with a bite force of over 300 pounds per square inch to guard a bone, you are harboring a severe liability.
So it all comes back to leadership.
Yes. Bringing this animal into a chaotic household requires an owner who can act as a calm, unwavering leader. Matching the reality of your actual lifestyle Your real noise levels, your real consistency to the dog's requirements is the true test of compatibility.
Okay, so we've navigated the psychological weight, the behavioral demands, the household dynamics. Let's pivot to the physical, logistical realities of maintaining this dog.
The nuts and bolts.
Exactly. The day-to-day nuts and bolts of grooming, travel, and boarding.
Well, on a day-to-day basis, their grooming needs are actually often a welcome surprise for owners.
Oh, in a good way.
Yeah. They possess a short, dense coat, which means you are entirely bypassing the need for professional clipping, hours of detangling mats, or dealing with the specialized hygiene of long-haired breeds.
So no expensive salon trips.
Right. A thorough brushing once or twice a week is typically sufficient to keep the skin healthy and distribute natural oils.
Okay, but wait. Looking at my own floors right now and thinking about the logistics, I have to ask for clarification on a biological point here. The guidelines praise their low-maintenance coat, but in literally the very next section, they issue these stern warnings about heavy seasonal shedding. What is the actual mechanism there? Why does it change so drastically?
It is entirely driven by the biological function of what is called a double coat.
A double coat.
Yeah. The Rottweiler doesn't just have one layer of hair. They possess a harsh, flat outer layer called guard hairs, which protect against rain and dirt, and a softer, dense undercoat that acts as thermal insulation.
Oh, like a built-in winter jacket?
Exactly. For most of the year, shedding is quite manageable. But as environmental temperatures shift specifically during the spring and fall, their endocrine system triggers a biological event commonly called blowing the coat.
Blowing the coat, meaning they shed the entire undercoat all at once to prepare for the new season's temperatures.
Exactly. The old insulation detaches rapidly to allow a new temperature-appropriate undercoat to grow in
So it just falls out.
and comes out in clumps. During those 3 to 4 week windows, the volume of hair they drop is absolutely astounding.
So my vacuum's going to get a workout.
Oh, you will be relying heavily on your vacuum. And you will need to increase brushing to a daily routine using specialized de-shedding tools to pull that dead undercoat out before it coats your entire house.
But it's just a phase.
Yes, it is a temporary, intense biological phase, but it requires serious upkeep.
That makes perfect sense. The undercoat is the variable. Now let's talk about mobility, because taking an animal of this size on the road completely changes the rules of travel.
It really does. It's not like traveling with a terrier.
Right. We are well past the point of just opening the back door of a sedan and letting the dog stick its head out the window. The safety requirements in the notes center heavily on crash-tested crates and secured harnesses.
And this is where we have to discuss kinetic energy.
Physics again.
Always physics with this breed. In the event of a sudden braking maneuver or a minor collision at just 30 miles per hour, an unsecured 100-pound dog exerts thousands of pounds of forward force.
That's terrifying.
It is. They become a devastating projectile inside the cabin. Securing them isn't about restricting their fun. It is a critical survival measure for both the animal and the human passengers.
And a standard wire crate you'd use in your living room isn't going to cut it for a car crash, is it?
Not at all. Standard wire crates are designed for containment, not impact.
So what happens in a crash?
Under the force of a collision with a giant breed inside, a wire crate will collapse, often creating sharp shrapnel that just exacerbates injuries.
Oh, wow, that's awful.
Yeah. Safe travel requires significant investment in rotational molded plastic or reinforced aluminum crates that are specifically tested to withstand vehicular impact.
Those are not cheap.
No, but they are necessary. You also have to factor in the thermal mass of a large black dog.
Right, because of the heat.
Yeah, their dark coats absorb solar radiation rapidly, and their sheer physical density makes it incredibly difficult for them to cool down through panting alone.
So leaving them in a car is a hard no.
Leaving them in a parked car, even on a mildly warm day with the windows cracked, can escalate to fatal heat stroke in a matter of minutes.
Which means there will inevitably be times when they simply cannot travel with you. Vacations, work trips, emergencies.
And boarding becomes the only option.
Right. And reading the notes, the success of that boarding experience links all the way back to the very first thing we discussed, incidental socialization.
It is the ultimate test of your early developmental work.
How so?
Well, a dog that has been routinely exposed to novel environments, strange handling, and the chaotic sounds of a city will process a busy boarding kennel as just another interesting, albeit loud, environment.
They can handle the stress.
Exactly. They have the psychological resilience to cope. A dog that has lived its entire life isolated in a quiet rural backyard will perceive that exact same kennel as a terrifying sensory overload ordeal.
And the handlers themselves are a huge variable. I mean, you can't just hand the leash over to a well-meaning teenager down the street who usually watches golden retrievers.
Definitely not. The handler must possess genuine ingrained confidence. Working breeds are incredibly perceptive to human body language and emotional states.
They know when you're faking it.
They absolutely do. If a kennel worker or a pet sitter is internally intimidated by the dog's size or reputation, the dog instantly detects that lack of assertive leadership.
And what happens then?
That vacuum of authority can cause the dog to become anxious, or worse, decide they need to take charge of the situation themselves, which leads to defensive behaviors.
Right, they feel like they have to protect themselves.
Exactly. So the caretaker must be physically capable, emotionally grounded, and deeply experienced with large breed communication.
So, we have traced the entire arc here, from the deep historical instincts of a Roman drover dog to the very modern logistics of aluminum crash crates and apartment socialization.
It's a lot to consider.
It is. And if we step back and look at the whole picture, the core reality of the Rottweiler is unmistakable in these sources. This is absolutely not a passive addition to your life.
No, definitely not.
You cannot acquire this animal, place it in a fenced yard, and expect it to self-regulate into a perfect companion. It demands intentional, proactive ownership.
It requires a calm, unwavering leader willing to put in the grueling daily work of active mental engagement.
But the trade-off for that intense effort is a partnership and a level of loyalty that is difficult to find anywhere else in the canine world.
It is a profound relationship built entirely on mutual respect and daily investments of time. You get out exactly what you're willing to put in.
So, to you listening right now, the most crucial exercise is to look objectively at your own daily reality. Are you seeking a passive roommate, an animal that just happens to quietly exist in the background of your life while you focus on other things?
Or are you genuinely looking for a demanding, active partner that requires you to show up, be present, and engage every single day?
That is the defining question for anyone considering a working breed. And it leads to a final thought that I think perfectly encapsulates the entire experience.
Yeah, there's one last takeaway here.
Throughout all the behavioral literature, the focus is constantly on how much structure, routine, and clear purpose the dog requires to remain psychologically healthy.
But if you truly commit to providing all of those things, if you enforce the strict training routines, commit to the morning walks regardless of the weather, prioritize the intentional socialization, and put your phone down for engaged evenings, the fascinating byproduct is that it forces the owner to adopt those exact same traits.
Wow, yeah.
In order to give the dog a structured, intentional, and purposeful life, you have to live one yourself.
Oh.
Ultimately, when you bring a dog of this caliber into your home, you have to ask yourself, who is really training whom?
That really hits the nail on the head. We began this conversation talking about the intimidation of physical muscle, but the entire journey of living with a Rottweiler is actually about forging inner reliability.
Absolutely.
And in the process of carefully building that reliability and structure into the dog, you inevitably end up building it into your own character.
It is a transformative dynamic when both sides are fully committed to the work.
It truly is. Well, we hope this exploration into the realities of the breed gave you some serious food for thought. Keep digging into the why behind the things you encounter. Keep asking those hard questions, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.